You think too much. You feel too deeply. You see through things too easily. And somewhere along the way, that became your burden. You've been told that your mind is a prison, that intelligence will break your heart, that the more you understand, the less you can enjoy. But the Stoics would look you in the eye and say, it's not your mind that's hurting you, it's your relationship with it. A sharp blade is not dangerous in the hands of someone trained. It becomes art, precision, mastery. So why should your intellect be different? You don't need to dumb yourself down to feel peace. You need to rise up in discipline to meet the weight of your mind. Because yes, great minds often suffer, but great minds can also build the inner strength to carry it all without crumbling. And that strength? It's not in thinking less. It's in choosing what to think and what to let go. 1. You feel too much because you understand too much. You've probably heard it before. You think too much. Or worse, you're too sensitive. As if depth is a disease. As if awareness is a flaw. But here's the truth. If your mind sees more, feels more, and questions more, that's not a weakness. That's power, raw and untrained. The Stoics never feared perception. They respected it. But they also knew that perception without preparation is dangerous. It's like opening your eyes in a storm. You see everything, but you're blinded by it. And so they trained for it. Trained to stay centered, not in spite of the storm, but because of it. Feeling deeply doesn't make you broken. It makes you alive. But aliveness without direction is chaos. Stoicism offers a compass. It doesn't tell you to stop feeling. It teaches you how to feel without being overrun. How to hold the weight of the world without sinking beneath it. In today's world, hyperstimulated, overstimulated, emotionally overexposed, your sensitivity is not a defect, it's your gift. But like any gift, it must be shaped. So no, you're not too much. You're just not yet trained. And that's fixable. 2. Intelligence without discipline is self-destructive. Intelligence is a double-edged sword. The sharper it is, the more it can harm the person holding it, especially when there's no training, no sheath, no intention. This is why so many highly intelligent people suffer, not from what they know, but from how they handle it. Knowledge without containment leads to overthinking. Awareness without anchoring leads to anxiety. Curiosity without compass leads to existential burnout. The Stoics were thinkers, but more importantly, they were trainers. They didn't worship intellect, they shaped it, tested it, stripped it down until it served something higher than itself, virtue. Marcus Aurelius didn't just ponder life's meaning. He rehearsed his reactions daily, trained his mind to obey clarity over impulse. You can have an exceptional mind and still be emotionally chaotic. That's not a contradiction. That's the norm. Because intellectual sharpness magnifies everything. Every threat, every judgment, every minor social cue. Without discipline, the mind becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting doubt, amplifying fear, distorting truth. So what does training look like? It's not rigid self-control. It's deliberate self-connection. Journaling to separate thought from truth. Meditation to notice which impulses arise first. Practicing pauses. Asking yourself when triggered, is this useful? Is this mine? The disciplined mind is not rigid. It's resilient. It knows when to act and when to observe. It turns knowledge into wisdom, not by learning more, but by needing less. Intelligence is not the end. It's the raw material. And if you don't forge it with discipline, it will forge you into someone you never intended to be. 3. The Stoic doesn't think less, they think better. Overthinking is not about too much thought, it's about undirected thought. A mind that loops, that spirals, that replays what-ifs without resolution. And most advice tells you, just stop thinking, distract yourself, meditate it away. But the Stoics offer something bolder. Don't think less, think better. A trained Stoic doesn't aim for an empty mind. They aim for a discerning one. They know that the mind, like the body, produces waste. And just like the body must eliminate what doesn't serve, so must the intellect filter, refine, and discard. This is why the Stoic practices daily self-inquiry, noticing what thoughts arise, which ones linger, and which ones hijack. They ask, is this true? Is it helpful? Does this align with my values? They apply the trichotomy of control like a mental scalpel. Is this in my power, partially in my power, or not at all? The moment a thought is recognized as noise, it's dropped. Not ignored, but released, consciously, compassionately. Epictetus reminded us that most suffering stems not from the thing itself, but from our judgment of the thing. When you stop believing every thought, you stop obeying every fear. And that is the beginning of freedom. Thinking is not the enemy, but unexamined thinking becomes a tyrant. The Stoic transforms their mind from a prison into a practice ground. And through that practice, they don't become mindless, they become masterful. 4. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who watches. Your thoughts are loud. They narrate your life constantly. They label, judge, replay, rehearse. And if you're not careful, they convince you they are you, but they're not. The Stoics, long before modern psychology gave it a name, taught something radical. Your thoughts are impressions, not facts. And your mind is not your master, it's your instrument. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the one who watches. This may sound abstract, but it's practical. Think of a moment when you were angry, truly angry. A storm of thoughts rushes in. They disrespected me. I can't let this go. This always happens. But if you step back, if you watch those thoughts rather than obey them, you notice something strange. They aren't commands. They're just noise. And you can choose not to follow. That gap between thought and identification is your liberation. That's where Stoicism lives. Epictetus taught it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And judgments, they live in thought. But you don't have to believe everything you think. In fact, believing every thought is the fastest way to lose your peace. So what can you do? You observe, you journal, you catch patterns, you name the voice. I notice I'm thinking I'm not good enough. I notice I'm replaying that moment again. I notice I'm trying to predict something I can't control. Notice, don't argue, just name. Because the moment you name it, you step outside it. This practice isn't cold detachment, it's radical clarity. You're not numbing, you're disentangling. The Stoic doesn't aim for a blank mind. They aim for sovereignty. They don't suppress thoughts. They recognize which thoughts deserve a seat at the table and which ones don't. This kind of mental leadership changes everything. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop looping. You start discerning. You stop drowning. You start choosing. And over time, this watcher within you becomes stronger than the thoughts themselves. It becomes a presence, a place you can return to, a still point inside the storm. You become your own inner guide. This is what modern therapy calls cognitive diffusion, what mindfulness calls witnessing, and what the Stoics centuries ago called phronesis, practical wisdom. So the next time your mind spirals, don't fight it. Step back, watch, name, choose. Because you are not the storm. You are the sky it moves through. Part 5. Existential dread is not a curse, it's a compass. Sometimes, the smarter you are, the emptier everything feels. You see through small talk. You question every system. You wonder why we build, love, strive, just to die. And in that wondering, you slip into silence, not peace, but dread. This is the existential burden of intelligence, the ability to see beyond appearances and then ask, so what's the point? But Stoicism doesn't fear that question, it welcomes it. Because the question, what's the point, is not a curse, it's a compass. It's the start of a better kind of life. The Stoics didn't deny the void, they stood in front of it, looked it in the eye, and said, given that everything is temporary, what will I live for? That is the turn. That is the pivot from collapse to clarity. You don't overcome dread by numbing it. You overcome it by naming it. And then you build something wiser on the other side. That's what Marcus Aurelius did every night when he journaled under the weight of war and death. He didn't search for cosmic meaning. He created meaning through action, kindness, justice, self-restraint, courage. Because when you stop searching for ultimate meaning, you make space for immediate purpose. Existential pain often comes not from meaninglessness, but from passivity, from waiting for life to give you a reason instead of offering your life to something worthwhile. The Stoics offer a formula. Life is short, therefore act justly. Everything changes, therefore hold nothing too tightly. You will die, therefore live today with honor. The dread becomes a mirror. It shows you what truly matters. When everything feels pointless, you're not broken, you're ready. Ready to stop performing and start aligning. Ready to stop consuming and start creating. Ready to stop pretending and start living by choice. The void isn't the end of the road, it's the clearing where your true path begins. Part 6. The loneliness of awareness and the strength it brings. The more you see, the more alone you feel. You notice the contradictions in people's words. You hear what isn't being said. You watch yourself withdrawing from conversations that skim the surface. Not because you're better, but because you're tired of pretending they mean more than they do. This is the loneliness of awareness, the space between you and the world stretched by perception. But that space? It's not emptiness, it's your edge. The Stoics understood this kind of aloneness, not as a punishment, but as a forge. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations to himself, not to be published. Epictetus taught in obscurity. They were surrounded by people, yet profoundly solitary, because their minds lived in a realm few dared enter. If you felt this ache of not fully belonging, it doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're awake. You're not missing connection, you're craving depth. And depth doesn't come easy. It comes with silence, with distance, with inner clarity. Here's the shift. Stop trying to fit in where you've outgrown. Not out of arrogance, out of accuracy. Solitude, when chosen, becomes sanctuary. A place where your thoughts grow roots, where your values speak louder than the crowd, where your energy stops leaking toward approval and starts flowing toward alignment. The Stoic doesn't chase belonging. They embody integrity and let the right tribe find them. And when they don't find them, they stand alone, still strong. Because strength is not in numbers. It's in knowing who you are when no one claps for you. So if you feel distant, remember, that distance is not your weakness. It's your proof of depth. And one day, when you speak, not to impress, but to express, someone will hear you and say, finally, someone else who sees. Part 7. Suffering is information, not identity. Pain comes in many forms. a short memory that won't release you, a future fear that paralyzes you, a quiet ache that doesn't speak but sits with you every morning. And if you're not careful, suffering starts to shape how you see yourself. You say, "I am anxious. I am broken. I am not enough." But you're not those things. You're the one feeling them. You are not your suffering. You are the one observing it. The Stoics made this distinction clear. Emotions are not enemies, but signals. They are messengers, not masters. They say, "Look here, pay attention," but they never say, "You are this." Marcus Aurelius experienced immense stress, political betrayal, personal loss, constant war. But in his journals, he never wrote, "I am overwhelmed." He wrote, "There is overwhelm." A subtle shift, but a powerful one. Pain becomes dangerous when we mistake it for identity. But when we view it as information, it transforms. Sadness reveals what we value. Anger reveals where we feel powerless. Fear reveals where we lack trust, in others, in ourselves, in life. The Stoic listens to pain, not to wallow in it, but to learn from it. They ask, "What is this showing me? What attachment am I clinging to? Where have I confused comfort with virtue?" This is emotional alchemy, turning raw discomfort into refined self-knowledge. You don't have to justify your suffering, but you don't have to obey it either. You can let it sit beside you like weather, passing, shifting, eventually clearing. And when it clears, you remain. Quieter, wiser, more honest with yourself. You are not the storm. You are the witness, and the witness always endures. Part 8. Protecting your inner citadel. Life will break through every outer wall. Plans will fall apart. People will misjudge you. Markets will crash. Bodies will age. And no matter how hard you work, some things will always be outside your reach. But one thing, one sacred thing, remains in your hands: your inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's true delight is to do the things he was made for." And that includes defending the one place no one else can touch: your mind, your values, your center. Your citadel is built not from concrete, but from choices. Every time you say no to distraction, you lay a brick. Every time you breathe instead of react, you reinforce the walls. Every time you act in alignment with your values, even when no one sees, you fortify the foundation. This is not spiritual romanticism, it's strategic resilience. The world doesn't need you to be invincible. It needs you to be anchored. And anchoring starts from within. The Stoic doesn't try to control every external outcome. They build the strength to face them. They prepare not because they expect the worst, but because they want to remain steady when the worst arrives. So what does protecting your citadel look like? It's waking up early to meet the day, not scroll past it. It's journaling what you fear so it stops owning you. It's defining what matters before the world does it for you. It's cultivating stillness, not as escape, but as readiness. It's choosing what to let in and what to leave outside your gates. Because you have gates. You forget that sometimes. You think everything must enter, affect, sway you. But that's not true. You get to guard the mind. You get to say, "This fear? Not today. This insult? It doesn't cross my walls. This chaos? It stops at the border of my breath." And with enough practice, your mind stops being a battlefield. It becomes a haven, a home, a citadel. Part 9. Turn thought into action, not anxiety. Thinking is a gift, but without motion, it becomes a trap. How many nights have you spent wide awake, solving problems that haven't happened? How many times have you had the perfect insight, yet did nothing with it? How many dreams have lived only in your mind? This is the curse of modern intelligence: endless thinking, zero movement. But Stoicism has a different rhythm. It says, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In other words, act. Thoughts are tools, not trophies. They exist to serve the life you are building, not to substitute for it. And when thoughts stay locked in the mind too long, they turn sour. They loop, they stall, they rot into anxiety. The Stoic interrupts that cycle, not with more thought, but with motion. Write the message, take the walk, say the truth, throw out the junk, start the project, imperfectly. Even small movements rewire the brain. They tell your nervous system, I am not stuck, I am choosing. And that, right there, is the death of anxiety. Choice in motion. You don't have to solve your entire life today, but you do need to do one thing that's in alignment. Not for productivity, not for progress, for clarity. Because clarity is earned through effort, not overanalysis. The Stoic doesn't trust every thought. They test them in life, in practice, in discomfort. That's why journaling is sacred to them, not to vent, but to untangle. That's why discomfort is voluntary, not to punish, but to prepare. Action is the gate through which thought becomes real. So the next time your mind spirals, ask, what's one small thing I can do right now that aligns with who I want to become? Then do it. Not because it's urgent, but because it's yours. Part 10. Wisdom over intelligence, the path beyond thinking. Intelligence is not the same as wisdom. One impresses, the other liberates. Intelligence is fast. It solves, analyzes, corrects. It wins debates and builds empires. But wisdom is slow. It listens before it speaks. It waits before it judges. It chooses when to let go. And in a world addicted to being clever, wisdom is rare. You've spent years training your intellect. Books, podcasts, late-night thoughts. You've built a powerful engine. But have you built a driver? That's what Stoicism asks of you. Not to think less, but to think in service of something higher. Not to escape your mind, but to lead it gently, consistently, toward what matters. Because wisdom isn't knowing more, it's needing less. Less approval, less reaction, less drama, more stillness, more action, more alignment. Wisdom isn't loud, it's lived. It shows up in the way you respond when misunderstood, in how you carry yourself when no one sees, in the words you choose not to say, because silence says more. You don't need to solve everything. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to return to your core again and again until you move from it naturally. The mind you feared, the one that raced, looped, overthought everything, it's not your enemy. It's your raw material. And now it's been forged, not to make you invulnerable, but to make you steady. You've thought enough. Now live wisely.